All right. Hello, my friends. This is Kati Gostaspi, and welcome to another episode of the Kati G podcast, specifically the What and Who is a Healer podcast series. I started this podcast sub-series because I was just curious about how we define healing in this world and why, as professionals, we don't think we can bring healing to our clients and our audiences, because we seem to assume healers are either doctors or crazy. So the mission of my podcast in general is for us to realize that we're great. We bring this greatness to the world, and how can we figure out to be even more great and bring this greatness that's deep inside our brand to the world. And so the podcast exists for two reasons. One, I care about humanity deeply, and I want us all to really see our greatness, to just be happier in life. And two, because I'm just like you, I struggle with my own feelings of being less than, and just like everyone else, learning from other people and hearing their stories and their triumphs over adversity, because we've all got them, helps. And some days are good, some days are not. But we're here to learn together. So this time, my guest today is Estella Arias. Estella is an agent and an editor. So for all of you who've ever wanted to write a book, who you know there's a book in you, I have worked on 2 books now. I'm working on my 3rd manuscript, and I think there's no other way to bring a beautiful brand to life than to put it down on paper. It's healing, it's cathartic, but it also allows other people to learn from your brand. So welcome, Estella. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Kathy. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Happy to have you. So, Estella, tell us a little bit about your story and how you ended up in the world of publishing.
Sure. Well, it all started on an airplane ride from London to New York. I was flying on Virgin Airways, and the pilot asked the passengers if they wanted to have a palm reading. Of course, I raised my hand. I was I was starting a new chapter in my life, and the palm reader told me that I would end up living in the countryside. And I was shocked because I was going to New York City and wanted to live there. Um, so I've never forgotten this man whose name I don't know. But when I arrived in New York, I began by my first job in New York was working for Avon Books in the foreign rights department. And I was mentored by a publisher, the president of Inner Traditions, who helped me along the way. And at one point, his editor got sick when there was a book fair in New Orleans. And he asked me if I would like to join Inner Traditions to go to the book fair as their editor. And I was thrilled. I took vacation days off and I went, and I absolutely loved it. And after that experience, he asked me to join Inner Traditions. And I was thrilled because I really liked their books at Avon Books. They publish more romance novels, and Inner Traditions is a publisher of books on holistic healing and esoteric philosophy, very, very interesting books. So at that time, the company was moving from Park Avenue, New York, to Park Street, Vermont. And
Wow.
so I joined the company and went to Vermont. And when I got there, it was a small publisher at the time. The publisher asked me if you could do anything in publishing in this publishing company, what positions would you want to have? And I said, "Oh my God, well, I would love to be the art director because I love design and art, and I would also like to be the director of foreign rights, um, which is what I was doing at Avon, but I was not a director because I love dealing with people from different parts of the world and speaking different languages. I'm fluent in English, Spanish, and French, and just love the idea of going to the Frankfurt Book Fair and meeting agents from all different countries of the world. And so when I answered that question, he said, "Okay, so I want you to start from the bottom. As an art director, I'm going to train you. And when you meet with the designers, I want you to tell them that you're learning and I want you to learn from them." So after 5 years of training, I became the director of foreign rights and art director. And I just loved my job. I felt so empowered, and I learned for the first time what it was like I felt like it was mine, like I was, being in charge and having the trust placed in me, and
Mm.
this opportunity that I had, I relished it. I was so grateful for it. Um,
Wow. So I don't know
so
what's more interesting about that story. Let me interrupt you for a second and I'll let you tell the rest of it. The fact that a palm reader was on Virgin Airlines or the fact that they were so accurate and on point, right, from New York to Vermont, or the fact that it took 5 years for you to get into that position. But that's not so surprising, right? Because we got to grow. But it was nice that somebody believed in you and saw value in you, and you got to express what your natural inclination and talents were, which is what we talk about here in brand development all the time. Does that
right.
sound fair?
Yes, absolutely. But that's half of the
Okay.
story. Do you want me to tell you
Yeah, of
how I became
course.
an
That's
agent?
why that's why I said let's stop and let me make those points and then tell me the other half.
Awesome. Okay. So after 9 years, um, I decided that I wanted to have a change. And I left Vermont and inner traditions. I went back to New York City, and at that time, I started a new relationship, and I got pregnant, and I had my son, and I moved to Miami, where my parents were. And my first job and of course, I had to start working. And I really love the world of publishing, but in Miami, there were what I call like B publishers. I it, basically um, I ended up getting a job with the city of Gables in the working for the mayor's office, and after 3 years, I was, disenchanted. It wasn't. I wasn't passionate about it working for the city. And at that time, I made a friend that lived in Fort Lauderdale who had a holistic healing center, and she invited me to a workshop. And the workshop was called Directing Your Destiny with an author called Jennifer Grace. And after the workshop, my friend introduced me to her, to Jennifer Grace, and she said, "Oh, um, I'm joining I'm going to be participating in Hay House's contest to win a publishing contract."
Hmm.
And I thought, "Oh wow, great, that's awesome." I was really happy for her. So she joined, and she did not win. And she called me and she said, "I didn't win, but I guess it wasn't my time." And so she wanted to try again. And
Hmm.
at that time, she asked me if I would read her book proposal and help her. And I said, sure. There was no money between us. It was done out of love, um, from, out of love for my work in publishing, and just to help her. So I read through the book proposal and ferreted out all the unnecessary language and hype. She was very hyping herself a lot. And so I took that out because basically, in a book proposal, you want your work to speak for itself. You don't want to tell the person how fantastic you are. You want to show them. So I edited it, and in the contest, she also had to do a 5-minute video. And when I looked at the video, I felt that she also needed to redo it. So she grudgingly accepted, and I coached her on it, forgot about it, went back to my work. And she was so grateful. She called me often and she said, I appreciate so much what you did. And I said, no problem. I said, if you win, I'll be your agent. And it just, I didn't even think about it. It just came up. If you win, I'll be your agent. Forgot about it. Several months later, she called me. And when she called me on the phone, she could hardly speak. She told me, Stella, she was stuttering. And I said, yes, Jen? She said, I won. I said, what? I won. I won the publishing contract. And I said, you got to be kidding. No. And she goes, I didn't only win first prize, I won second prize. I have my own radio show on Hay House Radio. I was shocked. And I thought, oh my God,
This could work.
this could work. And that's how I started New Chapter Editions.
Wow. So that's a fantastic story. What a beautiful story. And Hay House has they're still doing those contests, and I love their content. And you're very aligned with them spiritually as well. So, for my audience members who are thinking of writing a book, who know nothing about publishing, which most authors don't, they have a story to tell, a dream, and you know this better than I do, but this has been my experience from also being an author. Um, we have a story to tell. We have a dream. We think ours is special and unique, which I truly believe. Everyone has a special voice and a uniqueness, and we're not going to poo poo anyone's
Mm-hmm.
because it is true. What would you want them to know about the world of publishing and specifically agents versus editors? And explain to us, and I know I'm asking you to explain a lot in like 2 to 3 minutes, but the
Mm-hmm.
distinction between editors and what's the first step they should be looking for if they're serious about getting their content out to the world to heal the world?
Okay. So the first thing, once the manuscript is prepared, first of all, what they should know is that the traditional publishing has changed. A lot of people think that um, you send your manuscript to a publisher or to an agent and wait back. That's not how it works. Neither agents or publishers read entire manuscripts. Nowadays, everything is done through a book proposal. The book proposal consists of an overview about the author, your your social media platform, publicity platform, and 2 sample chapters only: a table of contents and a summary of each chapter.
So you
But
don't have to literally have the whole manuscript written if you're going to submit
you
because
don't have to. No, you
yeah.
only have to write 2 sample chapters, but you do have to have the table of contents and a short 1 paragraph summary of each chapter.
Okay.
That's it. So what I would suggest is that they do research beforehand. For example, I get I often get submissions for someone writes to me telling me they've written a book on poetry. Now, I don't represent authors who are poets. So the first thing I would say is do your homework. If you're looking for an agent, make sure that you know what category of books they represent. That's a courtesy. And also have your book proposal ready. The way it works is you first send a query letter to an agent, and that's a short email with like a 2 paragraph summary of the book you've written and asking them if they're interested. If they're interested, they'll ask you for the book proposal. So I suggest that you have it ready and that you look online, do your research on how to write a killer book proposal. Um, so basically that's my suggestion, and everything that you do, I suggest you keep in mind to make it easier for the as easy as possible for the agent. And
And what do you mean by that?
here's an example. So when I first started as an agent, um, I after being on Jennifer Grace's radio show on Hay House Radio, I I got a lot of submissions, tons of them, and there was one manuscript that I loved, and I decided to use contacts that I had. Now, nobody judge me, but I did know Harvey Weinstein, and this was a long time ago.
That's okay. I knew Bernie Madoff, and
Okay,
I hear what you're saying. I get it,
okay,
but we didn't
yeah,
know him that way. We just knew him as people.
right, exactly. So, and he had started Miramax Books. So I called him and I said, Harvey, I had this amazing book. I would like to submit it to Miramax Books. Can you help me? So he said, sure. He gave me the name of the managing editor. I sent her an email with an outline in a Word document, and in another Word document, the platform. To summarize, I sent her an email with 3 or 4 attachments, and she wrote me back and said, please only send me one attachment. And I've never forgotten that in my life. So
Hmm.
when you send anything to an agent, make it as organized as possible. When you send your book proposal, it should be one Word document and as simple as possible. Remember, they have their hands full, so you make it as short and succinct as possible with thinking about them in mind. That's my best advice.
That's good advice. I mean, anytime we all know this, for the listeners, you all know how busy you are as professionals. And the thought of making your life more difficult and trying to help someone, although, you gained a benefit as the agent, but still make people's lives better. In branding, I always teach you all that if you elevate people's sense of emotions towards happiness, they're going to remember you better. Your likability factor goes up, your memorability factor goes up, and they'll be your biggest fans and they'll do anything for you because you're easy to work with and easy to be around instead of being stubborn and controlling and disorganized. So that makes perfect
Exactly.
sense. So Estella, tell us, what is the difference between editors? Is there just one kind of editor? Is there different kinds of editors? And why is an editor necessary if we want to write a book? Why is our own writing not good enough?
Well, always. Look, even when I was writing the copy of my website, when oftentimes when you're writing about yourself, even the bio, um, and even writing about your book, it's always important to have feedback, have somebody else look at it. I had to hire someone to help me write the copy to my website, and so why is an editor important? Because you want to, when you do submit your book proposal to the agent, you want to put out your best work. You don't want to send the 2 sample chapters um, without it being edited, because you only have one chance when you send your proposal to an agent. Once they say no, you're done. That's it.
Now, let me ask you a question about that. I know my audience is thinking that. So you send your book to an agent, they say no. What if you change the book drastically? Does that count? And what does drastically mean?
No, it doesn't usually, but in my with my with my agency, I do give authors a chance to redo it. But when I express interest, so let's say, for example, someone has sent me a book proposal on a subject that I find very interesting, and the way that the book proposal is developed is weak. I will write them back and give them feedback and tell them, I think that the topic is very interesting. This could have been developed in this way or in another way, and in order to broaden the market, I suggest um, your summary. I'll give them feedback, and then I'll say, if you choose to redo the book proposal according to my suggestions, then I would be happy to review it again. But
Oh, I see.
most agents don't. And what
because they're too busy and there's too many books out there that could work. They don't want to take the
Right,
time.
and it's just how it's done. You're either accepted or not, and they'll write
Yeah,
you a letter saying they pass, or it's very abrupt, and it's very difficult for an author to get that. But I'm a small boutique agency, is what I call myself, and I do work with a lot of first time authors, and I do support them. So besides being an agent, I also help authors develop book proposals. And what I realized in the course of the years since I started the agency is that one of the things I'm really best at and really good at is developing book proposals. And in fact, I have sold every proposal I've worked on. And
good
so,
for you.
yeah, I'm really proud to say
You're
that. Yeah.
fantastic.
I got your email today saying that there's nothing wrong with saying good things about yourself.
Ah, yeah, healthy self promotion. That's good.
Yeah,
So, really
so
quickly, can you sum up the different types of editors that exist?
sure.
I know there's line editors and something else editors. Tell us quickly what kind of
Okay.
editors
Well,
do you look to?
there's a regular editor who will fix the grammar, the put a period here, a colon, this and that. Will just fix the make it flow better. There's a structural editor that actually will take the first part of the manuscript and put it at the end and structure it better so it flows better. And then there's also editors who rewrite it. So
Mm,
there's like line editing, structural editing. So with depending how the manuscript is written and the amount of work it needs, you need a different type of editor. So
got
there's
it.
those editors. And then there are editors at publishing houses that are called managing editors or acquisition editors. And the acquisition editors acquire manuscripts. They're the ones that assess it. And so those are the different types. But an
Got
editor, a regular editor will edit the manuscripts, or they're good for editing manuscripts, but um in my career, what I've realized is that people that go to an editor to help with their book proposal doesn't necessarily work because they don't know how to pitch. They'll just be editing to make it grammatically correct, but they won't put in the oomph it needs in order to catch the attention of the editor. That's something that the author needs to work with and research.
Yeah, I've actually run into that. I had somebody who had worked all across publishing, and so she knew everyone. And she helped me with one of my book proposals, but she didn't understand marketing and she didn't understand what to put in the book proposal to make it marketably appropriate. So it
Yeah,
read really well, but it wasn't what anybody was looking for, even her friends who were on the other side going, so and so sent you with this. And so she didn't look very good as a result of that process.
no, I
Be
always feel
careful with
bad
that.
when authors take it to an editor and spend a lot of money and it's just written differently, but it still doesn't have that oomph that it needs, and they're
Yeah.
very disappointed. It's
So,
horrible.
Estella, uh, what would be your parting words before we move to part two for people who are thinking about writing a book but just don't think that they're worthy or just don't think that they're a writer or just don't think that anyone will benefit? What do you have to say to them?
Well, like you said in the very beginning, I think that that all of our stories are important and are worthwhile. It's I would suggest that you begin yourself by writing your story, then get help from a professional to a line editor, a structural editor, whatever it needs, and go back to my suggestions from the beginning of the podcast on doing your research, on looking online, on how to write a query letter, how to write a killer proposal. Um, really do the research like you're doing, like you would for anything else in life, um, and do your best. And then when you do submit it, um, what of course, as I said, to make it as easy as possible for the agent. But if you do get in there and and they do ask you to send your book proposal, the number two most important factor in success of a manuscript is also the connection you forge with the agent. The easier you are to work with, the 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 more successful you can be. I mean, I have sold a manuscript under the pretext of calling an editor who I'm very friendly with and saying, "John, this editor will be great to work with. They're fun, they're
You mean
thoughtful."
author? You mean the author?
Sorry, author. Thank you. Yes, this author will be great to work with. So my suggestion is do your best possible writing. Um, Read books on to develop your writing skills. Hire an editor. Do research on book proposal writing, and of course, then contact agents who represent authors in your field, and then research query letter on how to write a great query letter. And that's it. Once you make the connection, then it's up to you and your charm and
And your brand.
and your brand.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the
So
content.
for my listeners, I don't want you to be overwhelmed. Estella very has been doing it for a long time, and she very succinctly went through the steps. That doesn't mean you're doing all those steps right now. So we just take baby steps around here. And to her point, the most important part of all of this is really feeling like you are worthy and that you have the self confidence and you have something to say. And that's all about your brand. Honestly, 50% is the substantive content of what you write, of who you hire, in my opinion. The other 50% is what we perceive of you and whether we find you to be an inspiration to us and someone that really cares about us and wants us to learn from them so we can make the world a better place. And that's all about your brand. So, um,
Exactly. Authenticity is very important.
yes, because there's a world full of writers out there and editors and publishers, just like there is a world full of everything. And your brand shines because you've taken time to work on it and hone it down into who you are and authentically represent yourself. And the book will show up that way. It's almost like a vibe that comes through rather than so much as content, because people are going to follow you, the writer, rather than whether there's a comma missing somewhere, which there won't be because you're going to take all the right steps to make sure the content is quality as well. But first comes your willingness and your determination to say, hey, I'm a writer because I am a writer and what I have to say matters and I
Hmm.
matter. And I can't tell you the number of books that I've read that have changed my life. And I don't even know the author, but I know that the book content, and maybe it was just a sentence in the book, changed my life literally. And oh my goodness, don't we all want to be a catalyst for that? So I'm going to leave everyone with that point on the first part. And Estella, now moving on to the second part,
Okay.
where we have established that leaders and experts such as you who come to the table with something on your own mind, because you're human too. And we want everyone in the audience to know that just because you're an expert doesn't mean you don't have your own full plate. So, what has been taking up your thinking time that I can coach you through? Because this is how the audience learns by watching you learn and grow.
Well, I love that you're asking me that question. And to be completely honest with you, as you know, I've been traveling for the past year or so,
Yeah.
and during my travels, I've met a lot of people, a lot of strangers, and of course, when you're traveling, um, the question that most people ask you is, "Where are you from?" And when you ask that question, and you get an answer, Spanish, American, it closes the door for further conversation, and it also has the potential of putting you in a box.
Mm.
So from my travels, I have developed my own. I'm working on my own book proposal. I already developed it. I already wrote it when I was in Turkey, and the working title is well, it's just a working title. It's not going to be the final title, but it's about communing with strangers and how to forge a deep connection with strangers in 10 to 20 minutes by asking different questions. And the premises of the book is really um, to encourage for human connection to be considered a form of art. And so I wrote what I think is an amazing book proposal with all these ideas on how to market it. For example, with each stranger I meet, giving them a bracelet that says "Hello, Stranger" on it, and with the possibility that these bracelets, a bracelet can even be sold with the book, and that people who walk around in the world, that travel or that are just in their community, those that are wearing the bracelets can commune with each other, and to make it easier to commune. It's so that there's billions of people that we can meet in the world. So after writing the book proposal, the pandemic started, and now I'm stuck as to, and also I was really passionate about it and really, just really gung ho on it. And now I don't even, it's almost like the passion has gone away, and disenchanted because of the pandemic, and people are not connecting. And I don't want it to be connection online. I want it to be human connection, one on one. So what to
Mhm.
do? There's a
So the question
pandemic.
is what to do. Yeah, that's a very good point, and I know for a fact you're not alone. The pandemic has shifted everyone from one way of seeing the world to another, and it's stymied people's projects and drive. So that's a very good question. First of all, thanks for being vulnerable and tying it back to your expertise as well, because look, audience, if an expert in the publishing industry is saying this, then this could happen to any of us. So here's my question for you. The world is not going to be online exclusively forever because this pandemic will go away, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so you go back because, and I think part of the reason why your passion waned, if I'm correct, because I knew you when you were traveling, is because you're not on the road and you're not having to commune with strangers and you don't
Yes,
have to make
you're
that
right.
effort. So you've lost the insight temporarily of the benefit of your book, right?
Right.
So I want you to go back and read your manuscript, is what I would say. And this is a really good point for everyone to learn from Estella. You know, our brand doesn't change. Your passion and your purpose for writing that book is still there. And we know that the pandemic will go away and life will resume. So we have to be able to dig deep within ourselves and find that motivation and that drive. Because if it was a good idea at one point, unless it's a moot point, which it's not because we're all humans and
Hmm.
human connection is always going to be important. And perhaps that's the underlying lesson for the audience here. Life may be online and online may become more important, but the fact is we're all still humans, and at some level we will go back to interacting in person with one another, because I don't see life being able to evolve and humanity being able to grow if we don't.
Right. And
So
it's so interesting because there I was coaching authors on, on being confident about their manuscripts and relaying it that way. Um and I also said that well, it's the same for an agent. Even when I pitch a book, if I'm not really confident about it,
yes,
it
yeah,
comes across. So that's why
yeah,
the better the connection I have with the author, the more it comes across. So
yeah.
if I can't, um, if I've
Connect
lost
with
my
yourself.
passion and I don't feel like I did before, and I send it to an agent, I also have only one go. So in a way, I'm now in the same position as the authors. In a way, I'm scared that they'll say, "Oh no, well because of the pandemic, no." Um, and
Well, let me reframe it for you. Let me interrupt you and reframe it for you because everything you say is very accurate and I agree and it makes a lot of sense and it's very vulnerable of you because we all fear getting fear. I would suggest that you go sit down and close your eyes and meditate, whatever you want to call it, and journal really on first reframe it for yourself.
Mhm.
Let me start again. Reframing it just means if this book was important before, just imagine how important the context will be going forward when we're trying to put our training wheels back on our bicycles and get back out there. And I say that as an extrovert. I would read your book because, as an extrovert, I always loved the personal connections, but I've kind of gotten used to sitting like this behind a screen and talking to people. And I can make the best of it because I'm an extrovert, but I'm gonna like need a brush up on what that means and the importance of it. So that reframe becomes really important after the pandemic because people are going to need training on why that's important and give me some tools to do that.
Right. Well, the book has at
Done.
least 100 questions you can ask that
Perfect.
that.
So
Go
it
ahead.
becomes critically important, I think, more so than before. I think the universe works in mysterious ways. This book was not meant to be published right now. It was meant to be published after the pandemic where it could be of real value. And perhaps you're just putting the brakes on because you're pragmatic and you know the industry and you know what kind of work works. But perhaps you've got some more inner work to do, my friend. And so sit and meditate and think about how you use these tools to bridge connections for yourself, where the need came from. Go back to basics and reconnect with the Stella that was benefiting from the content. And that should really reignite your fire about helping people, right? Like
Well,
I always
I, I,
say,
I think you're right that what reignites my fire is making a deep connection with a stranger. I get energized from it, and I just find it's almost like a miracle, fascinating that how you can go deep in such a short amount of time. And
yes.
during my travels, when that happened, I became more and more inspired and more passionate. And right, then the pandemic happened, and I spent 6 months saving kittens.
Well, but you know what? Now I need you to really stop and actually maybe even go out and survey people. What are you going to do as an introvert? You're going to ask in your surveys. Once this pandemic is over, how are you going to be out there? What are you going to do? How are you going to, what's the first step you're going to take? Would a book that helped you have tools be worthwhile? Maybe you start a podcast, Estella, where you ask these questions and bring these topics to light as a form of testing your audience, but also in the marketing world, we really believe that you have to prep your audience for what's to come and put out thoughtful questions of what are you going to do when you're allowed to come out of your house. I mean, we're still in lockdown as of this recording in December in San Diego. By the time this airs, we probably will not be, but it will still be like, I look at it like moles coming out of the hole, right? So
Right.
maybe go out there and ask the question of people, do you know what to do? Do you know what to say? They let people inspire you. We will inspire you because people will look at you and they'll look for the lifeline. And you're doing this, you did this for yourself, but we wrote the book because you want to inspire people and you want to help people. And so you just need to go back to basics and start asking people, but really honor the fact that this pandemic has put all of us in a lull so we can go inward. And perhaps your job of going inward was to back off and away from the book and go through this emotional low around it, is what I'm
Hmm.
calling it. You can call it
Hmm.
whatever you want, to really then come back out of that with a new revived fervor for serving. And this is my natural talent and my specialty. I can project out 5 years when my clients can't. That's why I'm their cheerleader. This book will have great value after the pandemic.
Right, and that's it's wonderful that we're talking about it because you have actually inspired me, and I should add to the book proposal that since it takes usually from the time that you submit a book proposal to an agent, once they find a publisher, it takes about a year for the book to come out. So,
Yes.
so in
Yeah.
actual fact, this could be a preparation, like really something that's needed in the world, and where people will be ready to connect with other people once the pandemic is over. And here you have it, the book.
There you go. There you go. Was that helpful?
It was very helpful.
Good. Well, I'm hoping the audience found it helpful too, and I'm sure they did. Thank you for being vulnerable. I just want to thank you so much for being my guest. Hey, Estella, if people want to get in touch with you, what URL, what website can they do that to find you?
They can go to newchaptereditions.com. Editions is plural, so it's newchaptereditions with an S.com. And everything that they need to know is on my website. My phone number, but I ask not to call, to email. My email is there. And I'd be happy to get any feedback. Emails from you would be a pleasure.
Oh, wonderful. And just so you know, she does not do palm reading, but maybe eventually she will. Estella worked with me, and she made me a better writer. She truly did. She really, she's very spiritual. We were very aligned in our mentality, and she's very honest and genuine and just gives it to you straight. So if you're not one of those people that likes to think outside the box and hear it straight and direct, and you don't believe in the greater universe, then you got to find the right person for you. But she certainly was the right person for me, and I'm grateful. And so I want to thank you for joining me today, and I want to thank my audience for listening. Here's what a healer is. A healer is a person like Estella who is willing to do the work for themselves, to grow, to really explore what they're good at, and to bring their skill, creativity, and love for their art and their talent to the world in terms of a profession. And so everyone's a healer. And I want to thank Estella again for giving us an example of who and what's a healer and how it shows up in the book industry. And so for all of you who've had a book inside of you, please don't believe that there's no one there for it. We didn't even have time to go into self-publishing, but at the very least, you can self-publish and make a difference. I promise
Absolutely.
you that. But never think that there's no room for you in the publishing industry. Just know that your vibe is what carries you, and your determination to make a difference in the world. And that's what we see, and that's what we appreciate. So until next time, this was Kathy G's podcast, and enjoy it, spread it, share it with others who you think will benefit, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Goodbye.